we wanted to get started here with a little bit of table setting to talk about where we are and what's happened over the last year and what sort of progress has been made. And really, what is the broader narrative that is holding our industry over the past 12 months? And so we talk internally a lot about crossing the chasm. And I wanted to spend some time today really sharing with you all what we talk about internally when it comes to thinking about strategy and what is the moment that the on-chain economy is in right now. So a little itinerary planning for ourselves today on our journey. We're going to start with a zooming out of where we are and what we've seen happen over the last year. And then we'll go from there into a little bit of a more data-driven market update around what sort of progress we've seen, both with people that we've invited to be a part of the Onchain Giving Summit this week, but also with us internally at Endaoment. And we'll move from how the past year has gone to what do we see as the main audience for the next year and beyond. This is somebody we like to call the multi-asset philanthropist. And we'll finish with a conversation. We're really, really fortunate to have Jesse Pollock with us here today, who will spend some time talking about this transition from online to on-chain. If there's one thing that we want you to take away from this conversation and really from the entire week, it's that diverse on-chain giving use cases are vital for the mainstream adoption of crypto technology. And that's not just philanthropy. Giving has many forms. You can give by crowdfunding. You can give by doing matching pool donations. You can give by funding grants and research. You can give by supporting political movements and political advocacy. And increasingly, this constellation of different ways to give is becoming pivotal to the mass adoption of our industry's technological infrastructure. So where are we? What's happening in the crypto landscape? And how does it enable or empower on-chain giving? Well, the reality is that you are here. You're here at this keynote, but we're going to do a little bit of mapping here. And here we have 4 images. And each of these images is really meant to represent a different phase of software eating the world. And donations or giving is not exempt to this rule of software eating the world. You know, on the left, what we have is the classic form of giving, where somebody's got a receptacle and in which you put cash. And we like to refer to this as analog. You know, this is still popular today. People still give this way. But it is not the only way to give these days. And as we moved our communications from person to person storytelling into digital forms like radio and television and later on the internet, you know, we had the rise of people like this guy here in the middle, Jerry Lewis, who is famous for many reasons, but one of which being pioneering the telethon. And he would go on TV and he would fundraise. And we like to think of this as like the digitization of giving, of using digital radio waves or digital signals to broadcast for a cause and raise money in return for it, whether over the phone or on TV or through the mail, maybe even through email. And once we saw the introduction of the internet, we saw fundraising move online as well. And so the screenshot that you're looking at here is Facebook integrating fundraising into their social media platform. And so we've successfully gone through like 3 different iterations of fundraising. And now we're on to this 4th iteration of fundraising. And we're in the middle of the adoption of the 4th iteration of fundraising. And that's what we call on-chain giving. It is a movement from analog to digital to online, and now from online to on-chain giving. And every time we get new technology, technology tends to follow an adoption curve. This is the classic, almost, this is almost a caricature of it, but this is the classic technology adoption cycle, where on the left side, we have people who are early adopters, innovators and tech enthusiasts, are early adopters who see the vision of the future that's coming, and they're willing to experiment and try something new, even if it's a little wonky. And then we have the rest of us. And the rest of us makes up the mainstream market, and they want complete solutions. They want them to be reliable, they want them to be convenient, they want them to be easy to use. And in between this early market and this mainstream market, there is a gap. There is a twilight zone. There is a trough in which it's the future of the technology is uncertain. And a lot of companies focus on crossing this trough. They call it the chasm. This is where we are. You are here. You're in the chasm. And I think it's important to zoom out and remind ourselves that we're currently sitting in the chasm, and that we're past the point where innovators and early adopters are playing around with crypto, whether it's NFTs or tokens or ICOs, Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever you might have been an early adopter on. We're sort of past that initial phase. But we're not quite yet at the stage where the mainstream market has come all the way on board. And so we're sitting in the middle of the chasm. There's another curve that people look at with new emerging technologies, and it's called hype cycle. And hype cycles are interesting to look at because they are kind of like the promise of the early adopter and the zeitgeist that tracks whatever early adopters are adopting. And so we pulled up these 2 charts. I think these 2 charts are actually really funny and kind of interesting. This is from a research firm called Gartner. Gartner, very famous. Probably many of you have heard of them. And this is their hype cycle for emerging technologies chart for 2022 and 2023. And if you look at it, in 2022, they had decentralized identity and NFTs here kind of falling off into the trough of disillusionment, right? They had gone through this initial innovation excitement. They had peaked on their expectations, and they were coming into the trough of disillusionment towards the end of 2022, early 2023. And what I find hilarious about this is that come 2023, when Gartner decided to publish this chart again, NFTs and decentralized identities and crypto were so deep in the trough of disillusionment that they didn't even put them back on the chart. And so I suggest an update to this chart here, because NFTs and crypto have sort of fallen off of this chart here in 2023. I propose that we are here. We're in the trough of disillusionment. And classically, this lines up. Generally, hype cycles track with the early market excitement of a new technology. And the chasm generally lines up with the trough of disillusionment. And so over the past year, we've been here trying to climb out of the trough of disillusionment, trying to cross the chasm. And like we said at the beginning, on-chain giving is increasingly becoming critical to that effort to cross the chasm. So let's dive into our market update. I called this section bottoms up for many reasons, and hopefully you'll see the motif come through as we make our way through this section. But let's start this market update with a look at one chart. This is a chart of the crypto total market cap. So if you add up the value of all the digital assets in the world, you'd get this chart. Now, the last time we were here, when we last held the State of Crypto Philanthropy that we've now rebranded, as Brusha was telling you, into the Onchain Giving Summit, we were here where this white arrow is. We were truly at near the bottom, if not the bottom of the market. $1 trillion in total value. A very impressive stat nonetheless. But since then, over the last year, we have seen the industry, not only from a usage, usability, adoption perspective, try to claw out of the trough of disillusionment, but we've also seen the market capitalization of the industry attempt to crawl out of the trough of disillusionment. And today we sit at a little over $2 trillion in market cap for all the coins that are out there. This has been a really productive year. We've seen an almost 50% growth, more than a 50% growth in the number of Ethereum users versus 23 and 24. We are well over $1 billion in total donations done of crypto assets, whether to political organizations or to nonprofit causes. Some people would argue that this is over $2 billion. We're going to be conservative here and say 1 billion plus. And like we mentioned earlier, we're over that $2 trillion market cap again, which is a really positive piece of progress for the broader crypto market. But you would be forgiven if you were confused. And I know many of us come from many different backgrounds here at this summit. And some of us live in echo chambers where the narrative is entirely bullish, where everything is about crypto mass adoption is just around the corner. ETFs are here. New applications are adopting mainstream methodologies for logging in users. We're seeing huge user numbers across different applications in the industry, but we're also seeing a record number of regulatory enforcement actions. We're seeing a huge amount of skepticism amongst the public around fallout from frauds and scams that have happened in the space. We see some people arguing that crypto should remain niche versus some people saying, here comes the mainstream market. You would not be crazy if you were a little bit confused about where the crypto market is today. And that's really why I think it's important for us to gather and talk about the rise of on-chain activism, of using on-chain services as infrastructure for being activists, not only in the improvement of our communities, but also in the adoption of this new technology that offers us great opportunity to lift up underserved communities, to bank those who have previously not had access to robust banking services, to offer a new investment market to the broader public that doesn't have the same restrictions to access. And so as a result, we've seen a proliferation of policy and education and regulatory and community organizing through new on-chain applications. And this is leading to increased accessibility to the technology. And it's encouraging legacy institutions to join the movement, to become less afraid of something that's new. Now, here at the Onchain Giving Summit, we do not, all the partners you see with us paid $0 to be a part of the Onchain Giving Summit. They were all invited to be here. And that's because we want voices that are not paying to play, but that are really doing the most impactful work in the ecosystem. And tomorrow's presenting sponsor, Stand With Crypto, really exemplifies this. This is a 501c4 organization that was launched in conjunction with a number of different companies, but led by Coinbase, and has been building advocacy community in pro-crypto circles around the country, helping us to understand political affiliations with different politicians and their stances on crypto, and recently crossed 1 million advocates signed up to join the fight in supporting crypto forward legislation in the United States. We also brought in Base. Base is an L2 Ethereum smart contract network, which is a bunch of big words to say it is a much cheaper blockchain that is meant for mass adoption. It is the platform on which we anticipate the on-chain economy will really blossom into its fullest potential, where transactions are essentially free, where you don't need any crypto education in order to come in and use a crypto application. And Base just celebrated 1 year. So we see Stand With Crypto crossing 1 million advocates. We see Base crossing 1 year, and recently crossing over 50 transactions per second, putting it well into range of competing with popular payment networks like Visa and MasterCard. The standard of operation that we expect from a modern payment processor. We also see organizations like the Blockchain Association, who will be with us today to talk about policy, holding robust policy summits with lawmakers over the last year to help educate them on the real-world use cases that are generating positive impact. And that's rubbing off. We're seeing big brands join with brands that are big inside of the crypto landscape, like Gitcoin. So we saw Shell and the American Heart Association both launch quadratic matching pools, basically matching donation pools with Gitcoin in order to fund research and climate action grants using crypto, using on-chain technology. Shout out to Gitcoin. We'll talk more about them with the Universal Impact Pool, but this year they crossed $60 million in total donations toward public goods. They're currently running one of their matching programs, grants round number 21, and they've already seen thousands of donations. They have almost $1 million in matching funds up for voting. Encourage everybody to go and make a donation on Gitcoin in GG21. It ends in just about 7-8 days. But that's not it. We also see organizations, big legacy organizations like the International Rescue Committee, partnering with other marquee organizations in crypto like ENS to help set up better fundraising infrastructure for people with digital assets, and trying to draw attention to on-chain giving in partnership with major fundraising moments throughout the year. This is just the smallest sample of different ways in which we see narratives that are not confusing, like what the main media narrative is, that showcase a group of entrepreneurs and a group of investors and a group of activists coming together to showcase what they think is really critical technology for the future of our country and for our global community. And this week is really all about highlighting those use cases. And we at Endaoment consider ourselves part of that use case. We know that in order to cross the chasm, we must provide a complete solution, something that seems equal to or better than what is already out there. And so we spent the last year working towards backwards compatibility, doing what your old DAF provider does, but doing it on chain. And this is the model that all of these businesses are following, that's allowing each of us to make that leap across the chasm, that we're showing up with a solution that has better customer service, that has values-aligned fees and competitive expense ratios, that is constantly improving, that has verifiable and transparent proof of asset movements, and still does all the things that people are expecting a giving platform to do. We think of this as a movement that everyone can get behind, that on-chain giving is really here for everyone, that you don't need to have a degree in crypto in order to experience the benefits of on-chain giving. And not only can it do what you expect a on-chain, what you expect a giving platform to do, but it does it better. And that's really, really exciting, because it also means that we get to showcase new use cases. And we get to market that use case directly to consumers. And so we've been taking this feature competitive use case and showing it off to the broader market and encouraging them to come and try something new that does what they expect and more. And by doing that, we're starting to see really exciting, wrong direction. Really exciting new levels of adoption, and getting to showcase how that adoption leads to new use cases. So we have our impact pool that we built in collaboration with Gitcoin and their Allo protocol. And this is like a new kind of matching fund that we've been able to show off over the last year that distributes matching funds to organizations based on the grassroots nature, their ability to get grassroots impact. We've seen organizations like the Hawaii Community Foundation and Accelerate Art, as well as Hogar de Niñas de Cuepe in Puerto Rico, Crystal Hearts doing humanitarian aid out of Ukraine, and Hand in Hand Parenting, leveraging Endaoment as their main source of fundraising, driving people towards on-chain giving in order to earn a larger share of matching funds. This is what on-chain giving for everyone and adoption looks like. Now, we wanted to give you a peek behind some of the stats that we've seen over the last year and really try to make this point of like becoming more accessible and marketing towards crossing the chasm can lead to an explosion in growth for usage of on-chain applications. The kink that you see in the chart, the up and to the right motion that begins here in mid to late September of last year, is when we launched on Base. So making our application accessible to the mainstream market has resulted in an almost doubling in the number of open donor advised funds at Endaoment. This kink in the chart, again, you'll start to notice a pattern, is, this kink in this chart is when we launched on Base, and showcases that when you bring your application to the mainstream market by lowering cost and barriers to entry, you can see an explosion in adoption of on-chain technology. We've also seen an increase in non-crypto giving. So we've seen an increase in just the amount of cash flowing into Endaoment since we launched on Base. This doesn't end at the inbound events either. We also see an explosion of global giving over the last year as we've been able to reach broader and broader audiences around the world. And the whales aren't going anywhere either. We've seen a 4.5x growth in donations year over year, a 2x growth in the number of donation events, and an increase in the year-to-date average gift, while median gifts have fallen precipitously as we've been able to support much smaller, more commercial giving alongside our large-scale DAF giving. It's been fascinating to watch on-chain giving really serving both small givers and large givers alike by virtue of being easier to access and an all-in-one giving location. These are just a snapshot of some of our stats, and we'll have a lot more stats throughout the week as we talk with different people in different focus areas. But I think these graphs especially underscore the impact that going for crossing the chasm has had on our on-chain organization. And we see this not only at Endaoment, but across the industry, that with the rise of abstraction technologies that make using on-chain applications much more easy, where you can log in with just an email, instead of needing to have a crypto wallet and setting it up, and that you don't have to pay for gas because gas is so cheap that the application pays for it. These advancements in the technology are moving us from the bottom up out of the trough of disillusionment. So what has this opened us up to? Who is this new cohort that we can now access? We like to think of this donor as the multi-asset philanthropist. It's somebody who has a wide range of assets, including crypto exposure. Increasingly, this cohort is also inheriting wealth. We see huge wealth transfer happening, and the people who are inheriting that wealth have completely different asset mixes and risk tolerances than the people they're inheriting it from. Additionally, they are much more likely to be socially active, impact-oriented, and values aligned, and have expectations that align with those interests. The people who are passing on the wealth exist on the far right of this graph, and they only hold cryptocurrency at about 25% of the rate as those who are inheriting it, being the millennials. This indicates a huge shift in the desired portfolio composition of those holding the majority of wealth in the United States. And it requires that we build systems that are backwards compatible and do not shirk on the role of digital assets in the modern multi-asset portfolio. We showed you this slide last year, and we thought it was so important we had to bring it back. And it outlines for us what's the difference between what we used to think of as traditional donors versus what we think of at Endaoment as a next-gen donor. That they care about platform experiences, that they hold traditional and digital assets, that they're super innovation motivated, and that if regulatory and policy environments are blocking that innovation, they will redirect their impact and activism towards non-tax exempt fundraising. They want to have a relationship with the organizations that they work with, and they certainly skew younger. And so in order to understand these on-chain givers and this cohort that will migrate into on-chain giving if they are not there already, requires that we as fundraisers adopt key parts of the worldview that's powering this new technology. These are generalizations, but I think it's important to remember that this cohort has extremely high tech experimentation tolerance, that they care about alignment between policy perspectives, values, and worldview, and how that impacts your business model. That if you're not looking critically from first principles at how your business is organized, about how your program is organized, that alignment isn't going to happen, and thus the fundraising won't happen as a result. They expect to be able to do everything they can do right now in the traditional finance world with the new asset class. So there's a strong expectation of backwards compatibility. But that being said, they don't necessarily have the same education level or context about the role of giving and the different restrictions on C4s versus C6s versus C3s. They see it all as giving. And so there's a huge amount of education that needs to happen with this cohort. But they're not against that education, and they're eager to get involved, and they want to be able to trace the impact of their gift, understand where the money went to that they gave to a political movement or to a crowdfunding campaign or to a Gitcoin grant or to a nonprofit organization. And ultimately, they really want to see experimentation. Right? So they're interested in these disruptive approaches to programming and grant making, and they want organizations to be creative. And so we spend a lot of time encouraging organizations to be creative, and we also spend a lot of time educating organizations, whether those are startups or companies or high net worth individuals or family foundations, about the value of giving and why digital assets make for great donations. So we've been doing, we actually launched a new education effort around donor advised funds called DAF Squatch. You can check it out at dafsquatch.xyz. And a small plug here at the end, what I would love to encourage is anybody who's looking to learn more about DAFs, we would love to host a DAF workshop. It's an hour-long workshop that we come and just educate people about DAFs. So yeah, please reach out either in the chat, we will find you, or send us an email. We are really looking to do as much engagement and education with this donor cohort as possible. With that, I want to turn to our fireside chat to kind of revisit this topic of crossing the chasm and what it's going to take to make the transition from online to on-chain. And that concludes the prepared slides of the Crossing the Chasm keynote. We will have a questions section later on, but I kind of want to keep the momentum rolling here and encourage us to move right along to the conversation with Jesse, because we are running just a bit over schedule there, and want to make sure that we get to Jesse here as we're ready. So let's bring Jesse in. And Jesse, I know you have a hard stop at 2, so I would love to sort of get you in there. Oh wait, hold on, Jesse is not with us yet. So let's go ahead and jump to questions. Is there anybody who had any questions about this presentation that I just walked through? Hope it was helpful. How can smaller nonprofits break through to attract more donors? Yeah, it's a great question, Paul. We do have, as we called out in the chat, we do have a panel on Friday called Courting the Crypto Donor. I think it's about having the resources and the understanding and also the education to be able to understand the crypto space and then to pour time into it, which is obviously something that bigger organizations have a lot of access to do. But it's something that motivates us to hold events like this, right? Like, we think that there's no really, like, knowledge is power, and there's nothing prohibiting your organization from learning about how to fundraise with crypto, making a connection with a donor, making a connection with a project, and wind up generating some significant fundraising results. But again, it does take time and resources. So empathize with the struggle there as well. Okay, I'm hearing that we have Jesse with us. So maybe we can pull in Mr. Pollock.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello, Jesse. Thank you for joining us. We can hear you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry about the technical issues. Coinbase doesn't let us have Zoom on our computers, and little do we know, this requires a Zoom app. And so I was a little bit out of luck, but now here I am on phone. I wish I could be seeing everyone, but my voice is going to be good enough.
You know, Jesse, you're sufficiently doxxed to the point where we're pretty convinced you're a real person. So it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. And we wanted to spend some time with you kind of talking about what it means to move from online to on-chain. And you know, you speak so well, and I think this group of people really needs to understand why moving from online to on-chain shouldn't be so scary. And if you could sort of give us a little window into the work you're doing to try and make it second nature to be on chain in the same way that it took us a minute to become online as a society.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, I think the way we think about this is that the shift from online to on-chain is really just the next generation of the internet. And just like folks in the early 2000s had this transition period where they were moving from offline to online, and in the beginning that was a little confusing, it was hard, people weren't quite sure how to do it, but then people got through it and the technology got easy to use and it just became second nature. We're going to see the same thing happen as we move from online to on-chain. And so all the folks who are sitting in this room, y'all are kind of at the vanguard. And really just in the last 6 to 12 months, has the technology gotten even close to good enough for everyday people to use? I think we're seeing that with things like Endaoment, built on Base, bringing down the fees, making it easy to collect global donations. But I still think there's more room that we can do to make all these experiences better. And my hope is that this isn't something where people are kind of having to opt into using on-chain because they have some philosophical belief, but instead they're using on-chain because the product just works better for them. When you're a fundraiser or you're a nonprofit, you're going to be able to raise more money. You're going to be able to collect donations more easily. You're going to be able to do your taxes and accounting and receipts more easily. You're going to be able to have a more global donor base. All of those things should be just concrete benefits that make your life easier as a builder and as a person who's trying to make good in the world happen. And it can be powered by this underlying technology shift, which is us moving from online to on-chain.
You've spent a good amount of time, and kudos to you. I think most people know you as Base creator, but a lot of our friendship, Jesse, and our relationship with you and Endaoment and you has been through a project called City 3. And I think it would be great for you to share a little bit about just your experience trying to work with nonprofits to bring on-chain technologies into their program, and what have been the big takeaways for you about what needs to happen in order for this to be more approachable, specifically for nonprofits.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, in my nights and weekends, I help start something called City 3, which is a nonprofit. And what City 3 is doing is it's trying to use on-chain technology to help cities run more effectively and have healthier economies, starting in Oakland, California. And so as part of that, we've created something called Oak, which is a local community currency stablecoin, which lets small businesses accept payments at lower fees and keeps more of the money in the local Oakland economy, working predominantly with small, kind of bottom of the funnel vendors like farmers markets and hairdressers. And so through that experience, we've learned a ton about what small businesses need. But we've also had the opportunity to work with a lot of local nonprofits in Oakland to understand their needs. Because as we're building this local economy, we want to make sure that the excess benefits that are being kind of created from this new efficiency are actually going back to the organizations that need it most. And so as part of that, we actually onboarded 10 nonprofits to Endaoment. They were able to start accepting on-chain donations. That was a big boon for them from fundraising. They raised thousands of additional dollars. And a lot of them got comfortable with using this technology. This was still about a year ago. And since then, we took all of those learnings and we actually have kind of translated them into making this experience better. And so this is kind of what you're seeing with Endaoment now running on Base, where it's way cheaper for people to donate and way cheaper for kind of nonprofits to kind of have all the complexity handled for them. This is a lot of the UX improvements that Endaoment has made in terms of abstracting away a lot of this complexity for nonprofits so that you all don't have to think about it. Instead, you can just use these new tools to accept donations, but then get kind of cold hard cash in your bank account. And I think it has also involved a lot of just kind of like breaking down stigmas, where people, I think, when they think of crypto or they think of Onchain, often the first place their head goes is speculation. But I think what we believe is that Onchain is a way for us to upgrade all of these systems, because a lot of these systems aren't working well for anyone. And the more we can use this technology to make payments cheaper and payments more global, and use it to make the experience better for donors because they have easier receipts that require less back and forth. That's going to be this just overall upgrade to the way these things work that will make it easier for nonprofits to get funded, easier for donors to connect with the things that they care about, and easier for all of us to work together to make the world a better place.
Yeah, it's so cool to see the work that you're doing at City 3. And I think, especially as we think about putting that work into context with Crossing the Chasm, I really think of that City 3 work as really much more early adopter focused, that it's an experimentation ground. It's kind of a new bleeding edge for us to play in. And I kind of want to take the conversation now more over to the mainstream adoption space, because that's really where your efforts have been focused over the past year. As we look at the media narrative that's been presented around crypto, especially around, the more negative takes around some of the regulatory fallout and regulatory actions that are happening, how do you think of the role that just friendly on-chain consumer applications can play and helping people to break down that stigma? Like, how do we move from experiments that break down stigma with very small groups of people to cultural movements that break down stigma with the masses?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is really just about making things that people want. And we had our kind of like a builder conference last week or 2 weeks ago, and that was one of the big themes, which is that the only way to break through, it's not telling, it's not like trying to convince people that XYZ is better. It's showing with real products that make people's lives better. I think if we can do that across a bunch of different categories, whether that's helping small businesses accept payments at lower fees, or helping nonprofits accept donations at lower fees from a more global audience, or helping creators bring their creativity on chain in a way that is actually serving them. Today, for instance, when creators are bringing their creativity onto platforms like TikTok and Instagram, 99% of the value goes to those large corporations. On-chain, creators earn 90% of the value, and that's a way better economic model for them. And so I think getting these products to market and getting them into the hands of everyday people where they can experience how much better this new system is the only way to break through the stigma. There's no amount of telling that can do it. We only can show people how powerful this is.
Yeah, Jesse, we only have a couple minutes left. I know you have a hard stop at 2, and the program must go on. But we have a lot of nonprofits here, and also we have a lot of like wealth advisors, which are two kind of different audiences, and maybe not the typical audience that you or I are speaking to on a regular basis about on-chain technologies. And I'm curious from your perspective, what is like the one thing that, if I worked at a nonprofit or if I worked at a wealth advisory and I had no on-chain experience, is there is there a use case out there other than Endaoment, other than base paint, or maybe other than like buying some USDC at Coinbase? Is there like a use case that you really see resonating with people as that positive first crypto experience? Like, what
Yeah,
is the first on-chain baptism, so to speak,
yeah.
that you think is working the best right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the place where people are able to kind of have that aha moment is generally when they do something in the real world that lights up the dots, like lights up the light bulb, connects the dots for them. And there's two ones that I'm seeing like happen a ton this summer. One is there's a business called Blackbird that's based predominantly in New York, but is expanding, that's helping restaurants accept payments at much lower fees so they can have higher margins, cutting those fees from the like 4% that credit card processors generally take to something much, much lower. And you can just walk into any restaurant, tap, get a bill, it's all in the app, and then check out, and it's way better for the restaurant, way better for the consumer. And all of it is powered on-chain. But you wouldn't really know that unless you were digging into the details. What you get is you get a better experience as an end restaurant goer, and the business will get a better experience as a small business that's trying to make both ends meet. So if you're in New York City, I would highly recommend downloading the Blackbird app. Or if you're not in New York City, download the Blackbird app anyway. You can get a little map, and it'll inform you when they're coming to your city. They're going to be expanding. I think they're in 400 restaurants right now. They're trying to grow to a couple thousand by the end of the year. So that's one. The other is that we've been helping small businesses, particularly coffee shops, start accepting USDC payments this summer. We call it Coffee Days. And the really cool thing about this is that, again, unlike normal, when those coffee shops pay 4% to credit card processors, with USDC payments, they're paying nothing. And instead, they're taking that money and they're actually giving it to the coffee bean growers. And this is just kind of the beginning, but it's cropping up across a ton of cities around the world. And so there are now coffee shops in San Francisco, Oakland, New York, Toronto, Berlin, Atlanta, Georgia, Huntsville, Alabama, and many more coming online now, where you can go in. First coffee is on us, so first coffee is free. You'll get set up with a wallet. You'll be able to pay with USDC for future ones, and it'll be way better economics for the business. And so those two examples, Blackbird in restaurants and then Coffee Days in coffee shops around the world, I think those are just really concrete examples where folks like the folks listening on this call and your friends and your family can go and see, oh, whoa, this isn't just speculative craziness. This is about upgrading these systems that are, hundreds of years old sometimes, or tens of years old, and making them more efficient, better for small businesses, more global, and just a technology platform that can work better for the world. And so I would really encourage everyone to go find that coffee shop, find that restaurant that just works, and try out that experience for yourself.
Well, Jesse, maybe in just the last 15 seconds here, maybe a call for building. Is there anything you would like to see a nonprofit or people in the giving space really build in the next year? What would you hope to see in the next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to see this just a whole kind of flow get easier and easier. And I think Endaoment's really been leading the way there. And so I think what success looks like for me is tons of nonprofits getting on chain, starting to accept USDC donations on chain, hopefully on base with Endaoment, and giving us feedback about what could work better. What are all the little weird UX things that don't work for you, don't work for your donors, but we can polish those. And I think if folks do that, if folks get on board, if folks give feedback, by the end of 2025, we can have this platform be literally 10x better than any other offering on the market. And that's not just like good for crypto, that's like better than any other product on the market, because the infrastructure is finally here, and now we just need to put it together and really make it work. So please lean in. If you have questions, like Robbie has been such a great supporter of nonprofits. I've seen him do it again and again, so always reach out to him. And then if there's any way we can help on the base side, always feel free to reach out to me. My door's open, and we love helping nonprofits, both big and large, be successful on chain, because we think that at the end of the day, it's going to help them run more effective organizations and make more change to make the world a better place.
Well, Jesse, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for your time, and it's great that we got to preserve your visual identity as the punk today. So
yeah, right. I'm the punk. That's me. Well, thanks for having me, Robbie. Thanks for all the hard work that you've done to
oh
bring
man, thank you for saying that.
philanthropy and nonprofits on chain, and so excited to be building with you and all of the incredible people who are taking the jump right now by just being on this call and listening and being open to the possibility that this technology is going to be better for all of us. So have a great day, all.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and thank you everyone for coming to our kickoff. We are going to keep things moving right along. I'm going to throw it back to Brusha.
Yeah, thank you so much. What an amazing start. Let's go. So the way this space works is we actually need to go join the next session, which is going to be phenomenal. This was definitely one of my personal favorites last year. This is Policy to Know Now. We still have Robbie on the mic moderating. We have amazing representatives from Blockchain Association, Coinbase, Senator Gillibrand's office. This is going to be an amazing next step to connect to the advocacy work that we want this community to be really championing. So I invite everybody in this space now to go into the lobby. You can just leave the webinar, go into the lobby, and you can just select Policy to Know Now, and we'll get started in a minute. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Robbie,
everyone.
I'll let you go grab them. I'll hang out here. Thanks, guys.